Okay, so my name is Mark Simons. I represent SalesLayer as an account executive, and I'll be providing you initially with a brief overview of SalesLayer, and then Emir will be taking over, and he will be looking at, first of all, why do you need a PIM system as a lighting manufacturer? What changes can you expect after implementing a PIM? And then Emir will finish off with how his consultancy, Augusto, can help you get there when managing a project like this. As I say, it's going to be a 30-minute session. And can I ask if there are any questions? Can you please share them via the Q&A section at the bottom, not the chat, and then we'll try and respond to any of those questions at the end. Good. So just a very short summary about SalesLayer. It's a cloud-based product information management solution, and we've got about 300 plus customers globally. So customers in the US, a lot in Europe, going as far afield as Australia, New Zealand. And if I'm going to summarize what the solution is all about, well, we focus on being designed for the business user. So we're trying to provide a solution that is easy to use, and business users are able to work within the platform in an easy and understandable way. We certainly see that the platform is highly flexible and a scalable solution, and that's really important when you're dealing with the lighting sector and the complexities of managing all of the information around lighting products. Another standout point just to mention is that SalesLayer is certainly known in terms of, from the implementation perspective, as being quite an easy and quick solution to be able to get up and running. So that's a sort of a summary of SalesLayer. Now, in terms of, and this is really for people that are maybe slightly less familiar with what a product information management solution offers. So just a quick overview. PIMs are built and are purpose built for centrally managing product information. So you can see on this slide, we generally talk about 3 steps regarding a PIM solution. The first one is the consolidation of data silos. So typically, when we have a new customer coming on board with us, they'll have data that sits in different places. ERPs are invariably involved, and then there'll be also data held in websites and spreadsheets all around the business. If you think about an ERP solution specifically, it tends to be very restrictive in what kind of content and formats and assets that can be held in the platform. So it's an important part of the ecosystem, but that's really where a PIM comes into play, in being much more flexible and manageable in managing the data that you need to be using to put out there in front of the market from a marketing and sales perspective. So the second stage then is being able to take that initial data and work with it to enrich it and provide that content that is going to be ready for customer facing, right? So you've got different team members, product managers, quality control, procurement, marketing, etc., all getting involved in the creation of this product content in the system. And then the final piece is then you've got that content all as you want it to be, how that information is then pushed out into the different channels, and making that a very highly automated process, right? So that data could be pushed out maybe internally for sales teams to be able to access, or it could be internally for managing spec sheets and catalogs, or it could be going into channels such as your websites or online channels such as marketplaces. Next slide, Emma. So just a summary of some of the benefits of why SalesLayer will help your business from a lighting manufacturer perspective. And obviously, Emma is going to go into a lot more detail around the specifics of lighting, but very much, first and foremost, centralize that data and have a single source of truth for all of your teams to rely on, right? So avoid that time wasting, trying to find the latest information across the business. Drive greater efficiencies by avoiding manual repetitive tasks, which are that's what teams get stuck into on an ongoing basis, having to manually update information. And it's all about driving automation, and that leads into things like quicker product launches, getting products out into the market much quicker than otherwise is possible. And then the actual quality of that product information, having a tool that allows you to quickly identify where there is missing information, or being able to make bulk changes so that that information is being published in the most up-to-date and accurate format possible. And then finally, across all of those channels, exporting that data quickly to your channels, and importantly, in the format that each of those channels needs to receive, right? So not having to work within each channel, updating in the information. It's changed and updated centrally, and then is fed into those channels. So that's a very quick summary of Sales Layer. Over to you, Emir.
Well, thank you, Mark. So as we promised, it's just going to be a quick and effective webinar. So I've been working in the lighting industry for more than 18 years. I started as an editor. I kind of published the only architectural lighting magazine in Turkey. I organized more than 20 events focused on lighting design. I became a trader, an importer of highly innovative technologies in Turkey. And recently, for the last 8 years, I've been doing consultancy for lighting manufacturers, out of which 6 years is purely focused on the PIM, product information management solutions. And to my chance, I was fortunate enough to be involved, and I'm still working with them, for 4 PIM projects with a lighting manufacturer. And again, by luck, each of these PIM projects was from different continents. One in Asia, one in Europe, one in Australia, and one in US. I think that kind of is related to my luck or by chance, but I've been deeply involved in the PIM process throughout the continents. So to start with, why do you need a PIM as a lighting manufacturer? Probably many of you recognize the company. I think they set the gold standard for the product data. It's coming from Erco, a German manufacturer who is a highly spec grade, who has highly spec grade products. As you can see from their variant pages, there is already 40 different data points. Data points mean each of these items is related to the product. It can be images, text, numbers, URLs, whatever. And those data points, as you might see, like images here or images there, and then there's like feature images like Dolly, which is also explained as a text here, and then there's a detailed text version as well. So some of them are related, but at the end there is like 40 different data points that you should keep in a database and share it to different areas. Then there is a lot of files, and now we're looking at 13 different files again for each variant. And out of these 13 files, some of them can be generated automatically through PIM, like 1, 2, 3, and 5. It means product specification sheets, installation instructions, article text, environmental product declaration, which I'm going to come back, that can be generated automatically throughout the PIM. Or there are some other data like 4, 6, 7, 8, and 13, which are basically IS data, LDT data, BIM data, Dialux data, etc. And those has to be in sync with PIM, because simply let's think of a lumen value of a product and CCT or CRI value of a product, which should be the same in the IS, LDT, and the BIM file. So it has to be in sync with PIM. And there are some other files which I think can only be created manually, which are often the design files, 2D or 3D, which is 3ds data, DXV data, or Autodesk Max, etc. So you have 13 different files. Some of them can be generated through PIM. Some of them should be in sync with PIM. Some of them has to be manually created, but still all those files are needed for each variant. Then you have the multi-version problem. It means if you want to sell to US, while you're selling to international, basically the input voltage, which will be different, and it requires some of the components to be different as well. So all of those products, all of those variants, all of those data points, and all of those files has to be prepared for 2 versions, maybe more. Then obviously you have the multi-language challenge. It means ARCO offers 9 different languages, out of which actually there is 2 of them is English, right? But again, even within English, there's a local difference, which you might have to take into consideration. There's a British English, which is used in UK and nearby countries, or there's a American English, where you write color differently. So with that, you have 9 languages for ARCO, and I cannot imagine thinking of preparing files, manually in different 9 languages. Just to be proud of, for one of my clients, they are working on 13 languages, even more than ARCO. And then in the lighting industry, there are changing components challenge. It means with LED, a lot of things, especially light sources, get upgraded with better lumen outputs, better efficiency. So you have to follow that trend and change those light sources. But as those components, including the drivers, are important and critical for your product, it means some of the data points are coming from the light source or the driver. So if you're changing that, it means you have to change all of those data points and all the files that has to go with it. And some of the LED drivers, we're talking about having, more efficient light sources, but for some drivers, you might end up with a phase-out driver, which you have to, change it even without the market needs. So those changing components is a big hassle if you are preparing everything manually. But when you have a PIM, it's much faster. And another thing with the lighting industry, there are often changing requirements. As lighting is used in public and commercial and the residential area, it's often related to the safety of people and environment. So there are often changes in the requirements or regulations. For example, well standard, which many of you might have heard, it's been a hype for the last maybe 10 years. And with well standard, one new data point added, which is the flicker data of your driver, which includes or affects some of the files that you prepare. Or I said it, environmental product declaration. That's a new data that ARCO has completed this year, I think, and probably this will be the trend or the hype for all the lighting manufacturers to provide environmental product declaration, which is becoming, the topic for all of us. And again, without PIM, I cannot imagine how you would be able to deal with it. Or most of you have heard of EPRAL, which is an online database by European Union, which forces you to register your light sources if you want to sell to European Union. So that was kind of a thing for the last 3 years. If you had a PIM, it was kind of an easier process. If you were working with Excel and all the data silos that Mark talked about, then it was a nightmare. Fourth example, digital product passport. Maybe none of you heard of it, or some of you have heard of it. This is a new regulation by European Union already in place, but it will become an obligation in 2026. It means, and it includes our industry, lighting industry, for all the products that you produce, you have to provide a machine readable API-related data for 10 years. This is a new obligation that will come in place in, as I said, 2026. It's already there, but you will have to work with it in 2026, and you won't be able to deal with PDF files anymore because the law asks you to create a machine readable. It means really field by field area or data for your product, and you need to keep it for 10 years. Again, how that might be possible without PIM, I cannot imagine. So these are the reasons that I think that makes PIM as an crucial system for a lighting manufacturer. Then I want to share my experience with these companies and share what changed afterwards when we applied PIM properly. So let's define what is before PIM area. Obviously, as Mark said, you have all the data everywhere, Excel files, JPEG files, ERP, all of that, right? It comes manually to a bunch of people, a big group, marketing team, technical team, web agency, advertising agency, and translators. They get this manual data, create manually the catalog, websites, spec sheets, CE documentation, installation, instruction, and all of that, which I call output. Resources is the team that works on the PIM, and the input is the data coming in. So before the PIM area, everything is manual. So there is a high risk of mistakes. Obviously, when there's a manual process, mistakes are there. We're all human. Resources, you need much bigger team or much more resources to deal with this inefficiency manually. And because everything is manual, it's hard to define a proper process. So what changes after PIM is basically everything or all this input, all this data goes automatically inside PIM. And once the team, which is much smaller than the before PIM area, works on manually on PIM to cleanse it, enrich it, find the errors, do the quality verification, and all of that, goes automatically, becomes automatically the output, which is the catalog, website, spec sheets, and all of that. You can see there's a huge day and night difference because with automation, you have much lower risk for mistakes. You need much less resources to be able to create these technical documentation that you need, obviously. And thank God there is a process defined because of the automation that comes with it. So what happens in PIM, as Mark said, there's enrichment, cleansing, content management, catalog management, validation, reporting, translation, everything happens in PIM. And then it goes automatically to the output areas, which we need to define together as a team. Again, what changes from manual to automatic, I think it's important to underline, as Mark said, you create a single source of truth. It means when it's in PIM, you can trust on the data, and it makes the internal clients and external clients trusting the data that you share with them, including catalog, website, and all of that. There's obviously an increase in productivity, again, day and night, because manual to automation. And again, needless to say, normally when you have a new product, to be able to create a catalog, brochure, website pages, spec sheets, and all of that, which takes often ages, 6 months or so on, comes to a worth of a couple of days or a week, let's put it this way. So it makes, obviously, the company a lot more productive than ever. And what I find most importantly throughout my experience is that the culture and the mindset of the company changes, because everybody realizes when you change something in PIM, it changes everywhere. It makes so much easier for the whole company to trust in the data that they provide. Even if there is a mistake, it's much easier to fix it anyway. It takes often a day. You change something in PIM, and the next day you have on all these languages, all these versions, and all these product data to be changed automatically, and it makes a big difference. So we talked about why. We talked about what changes when you apply properly. And now let's talk about how. How do we, Ağustos, help you to get there? First, which I call step one, is the proposal part. We sit down together with you to understand the project. That project, which needs the definition of the input, where the data will be coming from. We will need to define output, where the data will go to. That will be our goals. And now we need to define the resources. Resources meaning, how many people in your internal team can work on it? Or do we need vendors outside? Do we need a graphic designer or data specialist, data entry specialist, or any other vendor we might need? So we define the number of SKUs, languages, versions, all of that, of course, as a guesswork. And now we create the proposal, which I would like to call a solution, because that solution is not, or our proposal is not only about a software rental fee, it's about a solution which includes the PIM software as a cost, our consultancy, and the cost of the vendors, whatever the definition is. And not only the budget, we also define the timeline. So it means, as a consultant, what we do, we deal with the project management totally. It means everything is in our responsibility, of course, by going along with the resources that are defined at the beginning. And now we do the data structures and we do the training as well. So basically, we give you a solution. Once you accept the offer, once we have a budget and a timeline, the first step happens with what I call discovery. It means everything that we talked before creating that solution, now we go into detail, understanding the input and output in detail. Okay, you need a website, but what will be the design of the website? What kind of new features we're gonna apply to? Or resources, but how many internal team and vendors, as I explained before, the spec sheet, how it's going to look like, etc. So we really create the solution in detail on the step one by working together. And this is what I called phase one, because there's an analogy that I like to use it often. If you want to build a skyscraper or anything, you really need to have a good base. And without having a good base, it's impossible to do anything properly. So the phase one is about creating that base together. Base of, the essential of what needs to be done. Often it's website and spec sheets, to be honest with you. But it can be more than that depending on your project. The second part, once we have the solution in detail together with you, we start working on the data structure and we start working on the brief. That data structure and the brief will become the outputs that you desire. That's the part where, us or me personally as a consultant working on. And once we have the detailed step one, step two, the brief and the data structure, that is the last part, which is the data entry and the coding. The brief that is being prepared will be shared with the coding team, which we bring to the project, or we can work with your own web agency. We will give them some samples of data entry so that they can code, while we, meaning the data entry team, either internal or vendors, can keep working on the data entry while the coding happens. This works in parallel, which is the final step before the launch. And finally, when we have the coding is done, the first data entry is done, we go with the launch, which is the phase one. We create the base for your product data management. Whereas once we have a strong base, we can always, as I said, go with the second, third, fourth, or build a skyscraper from there. Because what I've seen, again, with my experience with the 4 projects that I'm involved with, once you have the base, it's easy to build this additional stages, and more features that comes to your mind becomes a reality. So again, that's the part where I was mentioning the culture or the mindset changes. So just to underline and finalize my part of the webinar or presentation is that what we are sharing here is not a software or we're not selling you a software. We're giving you a solution, a complete solution to turn your product data cost into an order. That's what I would like to call simplifying complexity. Thank you.
Thank you, Emre. Really nice walkthrough of the whole process. And I think, as you say, the key word there being solution. There's a lot to think about, and I think what you take off the client's hands is that that concern over the complexity. It's more about thinking about what are the outputs, what are the benefits that as a business they want to experience. As I said at the start, if you've got any questions, please do add them into the Q&A section. Can't see anything at the moment, so Emre, I'll give you a question. What do you reckon is? Oh, and by the way, congratulations on getting that all done within the time frame. Much
Thank
better
you.
than practice. Yeah, so on time frame, what do you reckon a sort of a typical time frame for a PIM project looks like?
Well, of course, it depends on the definition of the project in terms of output, input, and the resources part of the story. But again, with my experience, 6 months seem to be a fair amount of time if we are heading for a website and spec sheets, because this is where I like to start with, because this sounds like a good base. And again, depending on the size, it might change, but 6 months seems reasonable from my experience, which can be divided into, if we're going to check the sessions, the 2 months for the discovery part, 1 month for the brief and the data structure, and the 3 months for the data entry, the coding. That so far worked well with my own experience. Again, it depends on having 2 language or 1 language or 13 language is completely different. But as a general idea, 6 months time to be a feasible or workable solution so far for me.
I think that's a fair answer, Emery, because as you say, every project is different, and as you say, you break it down into different segments. So some of those segments might not be needed on some projects. On other projects, it's going to be a lot more that's needed. But I think that gives a pretty good indication.
I might add something after you said this. What I like to do, and I know PIM as a term is a new term for many of the clients that I have, and people that are attending this in this webinar. And what I'm trying to do, or what we are trying to do, is to get rid of all these question marks, because there's a lot of question marks before you enter the PIM project, the software process. And I'm trying to create a structure where it will be easier for the client to have a trust on the process and the timeline. That's why I think it's important to define those areas properly.
Excellent. So we're just into that last minute, Emre. Any
Okay.
other kind of common questions you can think of that often come up for you?
The timeline is just, as I said in the beginning, that's often asked. Other than that, the budget is a general question, which I have an answer, which I'm not going to share here. But again, that answer really depends on the vendor's process. I have an answer, still depends on the some of the proposal part, but a broad range. I might be able to say checking even on the website and all of that. So I guess timeline and budget, which is the big questions here, I kind of have some answers here. Let me put it this way. That's why I want to call it like a complete solution, because it's been done and we have a structure to deal with it again.
And I think Emre, it's fair to say that a lot of our clients are pleasantly surprised when they actually understand what the cost, the total cost is involved, because where Salesware certainly helps is being a cloud-based system that is easy to implement. It's not got that real heavy implementation project involvement that certainly more legacy solutions have. And I know you offer very fair rates as well as a consultant.
Thank you, Mark.
Now look, Emmy, now we've got 2 questions that have cropped up.
Okay.
So we are going to overrun, but let's do that. So I've got someone here. We don't have many products and we're doing everything manually. Does it make sense to invest in sales layer? So they're sort of saying 6 to 7 products.
6 to 7 products?
Yeah.
What about languages? But again, 6 to 7 products. It's an easy question in the sense it's too low, as a starting point. So maybe it's not worth but I would still look for a system to deal with it anyway, because with time you will have more products. But again, 6 to 7 products seemed very low. Just to give you an idea, all the clients that I have, the numbers changes around a couple of hundreds to more than 10,000. So I've never heard 6 or 7 before. So, but to me, even starting around 100 and more, 3 language, it already makes sense to have an investment in PIM. 6 to 7 products, I'm having difficulties to envision, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think I'd agree with you on that one, Emre, from a sales layer perspective. I think that would be too much on the low side, but certainly a few hundred. We've certainly got clients that that have that sort of size catalog. And as with all these things, it's how much information are you holding against those products? What information in terms of attributes and assets that you're needing to hold against the product? That's the complexity that, and then where are you needing to share all that information to as well? So there's no hard and fast answer to that. It's more about, I think, is your business struggling from a complexity perspective? Is it using up a lot of time and human resource to manage it? And that's where obviously we can help.
Another addition that I might add to this, of course, there are some industries like lighting industry, and it's not alone, you know, like chemical industry or furniture as well. If your technical documentation defines the success of your product, then you know that's another story. And PIM is ideal, and you can't get away with it without it, because the technical documentation will define how well you're going to sell that product in the market. So it's about that kind of mindset as well.
Yeah, perfect. Right, we have now run 4 minutes. Oh, we've got one more question, so let's keep overrunning. If you've got 6 to 7 families of products, of course, there are several variations. So again, I think, yeah, it is just talking about the complexity side of it. When you've got different families of products and the variations around those products, obviously that adds to that complexity that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, I think we should we should wrap up. So thank you for everyone for attending. As I mentioned, we will be sharing this recording with you. But if you do want to reach out to either Emre or myself or Sales Layer, please do. We'd love to have a conversation with you. You know, even if you think maybe you're not sure if the project is right for you, we're more than open to have that initial conversation with you and give you a bit more help for you to be able to evaluate it for yourself. So great to see you all, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Mark, for everything.
Bye.
Bye-bye.